To our magic moments covered by State Farm, because this plays in really, really well into our next conversation. And as you know, Myron, by the time we reach Valentine's Day, the race to Selection Sunday really begins in earnest. And right now, the Kansas Jayhawks are playing like a team that is hitting their peak at the right moment. Tough game today against Iowa State, but they have done so and won these games over the last several weeks by and large without or with very little input from the presumed number one overall pick in Darren Peterson coming up in this NBA draft. First and foremost, what's the latest on DP's availability as they go up to maybe one of the toughest road environments in the entire country today?
DP is ready to go according to Bill Self, but that's never really the question, is it? He's usually ready to go to start games. The question is, can he finish a game? I think that's what you're looking for here. Hasn't practiced most of the week because of the flu-like symptoms that kept him out of the Arizona game. So I think we're trying to see, do we see Darren Peterson at 30-plus minutes, or is it something closer to 20 minutes, and how does that factor into this matchup?
Myron, obviously one of the reasons that this has been such a hot topic of conversation is I feel like most people think that this is the clear-cut best player in the country, presumed number one pick, and the concern with the availability now has people asking, well, should NBA teams be worried about this? I sort of view it from the perspective of this is a young man that's trying to stay healthy and preserve his body, but do you feel like coaches, executives, GMs in the NBA should be concerned with that lack of availability up to this point?
Well, I was at the Kansas-Arizona game, and I hung out there for a few days. I mean, I was in Kansas longer than Dorothy was, I felt like. And I talked to a lot of people, and I talked to some NBA execs, and I presented exactly what you just said. I said, listen, if you have a guy who may not be available, if you have a guy where there are questions about his availability, how does that affect how you see Darren Peterson? First off, he laughed at me, and he said, listen, this changes nothing. He said, Darren Peterson was number one on our board in October. He was number one on our board in December, and he's number one on our board today. So as much as college basketball fans are getting into the DP conversation and whether or not he's available and what that means, I don't think the NBA is having the same conversations at all. One exec told me that if he has to sit a year or even more, he's still worth it. They think he's that good. Exec told me that if you put Darren Peterson on his roster tonight, Darren Peterson scores 17 points, gets 5 rebounds, 3 steals tonight. So that's how they see Darren Peterson and his potential status at the next level.
No doubt. And I don't think people are questioning the potential or the talent or even the injuries. I heard Bill Self come out earlier this week and say, kind of reaffirm everybody's doubt that, like, no, these injuries were legit, every single one of them. And I'll take the Kansas fan side of the perspective here. I don't question the injuries or the severity of them, but what I do question is at least the body language on the sidelines. Like the sideline energy tells a different story, I think, Myron, because normally if you see a player cramping, whether it be at the college level, the NBA level, the high school level, there are trainers working on a player to help get them back into a game. We haven't really seen that. So it leads me as just a pure fan of college basketball, and I'm sure Kansas fans, to ask the questions like, hey, are you do you want to be here? Do you want to play for Kansas? Because while somebody is going to pay him a lot of money to be the number one overall pick in the NBA, Kansas fans in the world of NIL, they're not paying him to be the number one pick in the draft. They're paying him to play for Kansas basketball. So your thoughts on all of that and maybe whether or not it's warranted, some of the criticism that he has gotten for lack of play this year.
Sam, I think you're speaking for Kansas fans, right? The energy component on the sidelines, the body language. I think that's a big part of this because you see him on the sidelines and he doesn't have a ton of emotion. He doesn't always necessarily look engaged, but I think that's just the way he is. When I was with him this week in Lawrence and he walked into the room, 2 things you notice. One, he's bigger than you think up close. And number 2, he just is one of those guys who never looks like he's that serious. And we all know somebody like that. And you got to think about Darren Peterson. He's been the best player on every basketball court he has touched for the last decade of his life. So I just think he's just smooth and doesn't really have some of that demonstrative energy that you want to see. And he told me, he said, listen, guys, one thing people forget is that I'm just a freshman, and he's still trying to figure a lot of things out. And he does feel, I think, all the scrutiny on him. But he says his body language doesn't speak to how badly he wants to play.
Ceiling for Kansas if Darren Peterson is healthy this year, Myron.
National championship, maybe the second best team, only behind Michigan.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And by the way, a lot of other folks do as well, especially with the way that they have been playing as of late, just taking down Arizona as one of the final remaining unbeaten teams this year. Those were your magic moments covered by State Farm. Thanks, Myron.